Worldwide whispers. Instead of going to work the next morning, Mom decided to walk to the bus stop with me. She said it was because me and Tom were famous now, and that even though we probably wouldn't be famous for more than a day, we needed to be careful. I just want to make sure you're not going to be chased by any reporters, she said, as she helped me put my coat on. Some of them are good people doing their job, but some of them have absolutely no scruples. I followed Mom out of the flat, wondering what scruples were, because Mom had looked angry when she had said the word, so I knew it was bad not to have any of them. I also wondered why reporters might chase us. Tintin, who has to be one of the best reporters in the world, only ever chased people who were kidnappers or thieves or had done something wrong. When we reached the bus stop, we found Tom's mom and dad there too. Mom went to talk to them, and Tom and I huddled together. Tom said his parents had told him that if he ever ran away from school again, he would be so grounded that he would never see daylight again. But I told Mom it comes in through the curtains anyway, even when they are shut. And then, when we watched the news, she screamed and hugged me and said how brave I was, said Tom, scratching his head. I don't get it. I told him I didn't get it either, and about everything that had happened to me after I had gotten home too. All the neighbours coming over, and about horrible Mr. Greggs, and how Mum had been angry one moment and then happy the next moment, and how she had laughed at what Stan the taximan had said. Oh yeah, that gave him a cheer too, Tom grinned. I've never seen him cheer for anything before, except when we dropped off my Nana at the airport after she'd been staying with us for a month. We heard footsteps, and Josie and Michael came running up to meet us. We saw you on the news. Did you give them the note? What did they say? As soon as Josie and Michael finished asking their questions, Tom and me took it in turns to answer them. As we were talking, lots of people gathered round and asked me and Tom if we were the kids from the news. We were about to say yes when Tom's dad called us over. Now listen up, said Tom's dad, kneeling down. There are going to be a lot of people wanting to ask you all sorts of things about yesterday. And whilst you can tell Josie and Michael and Mrs. Sanders everything, and Mrs. Can? I added. Yes, and Mrs. Can? And Miss Hempsey? Asked Josie. Okay, yes, her too, nodded Tom's dad, scratching his head in the exact same way Tom does when he's thinking. But if anyone else asks you what had happened, I want you to say exactly what grown-ups say when they are famous and they've got to keep something a secret. Shall I tell you what that is? We all nodded and looked at each other excitedly. Famous grown-ups always say, no comment, when they want to keep something a secret, continued Tom's father. And that's what I want you to do. Let's all give it a practice right now. Tom, you go first. No comment, said Tom, thrusting his nose in the air. No comment, said Josie, grinning. No comment, said Michael seriously. No comment, I said loudly. Good, said Mum. Now, if anyone asks why you went to Buckingham Palace or what the police said to you or anything about yesterday, you say, no comment, we all shouted, making all the people at the bus stop look over at us. My mum and Tom's mum and dad all smiled. Now, there is a promise we want you all to make too, said Mum. We want you all to promise us that you won't look at any newspapers today. We all looked at each other, frowning a little, but nodded. Promise? Asked Tom's mum. Not a single newspaper? We promise, we all said, although I could see Josie had her fingers crossed behind her back. Excellent, said Tom's dad, giving us all a thumbs up. Now, we have spoken to Mrs. Sanders this morning, said Tom's mum, and a teacher, probably Mrs. Sanders herself, will be meeting you at the gates to make sure you don't get hounded by the odd reporter or two. You'll be taken straight to her office because she needs to have a few words with all of you before lessons start. Oh no, cried out Michael. Are we all in trouble? Are my parents going to find out? It will be fine, son, said Tom's dad, patting Michael on the back. I promise. Now go on, have a good day, said Mum, as our bus came to a loud hissing stop in front of us. And we'll see you tonight. You're all to come straight home, she shouted. We all nodded and waved and ran up to the top deck as usual. The other passengers looked at me and Tom with a frown before looking at their newspapers and then looking back at us again. We hurried past and sat together in a little huddle. In whispers, Josie and Michael told us about their date yesterday. It had been exciting too. Josie said she'd had to make up a story involving a Chinese takeaway and endless buckets of puke to get Mrs. Khan to believe I was sick but would be back the next day. And Michael had pretended to lose his voice so that he didn't have to say anything to Mrs. Khan when she asked him where Tom was. But of course, he had kept forgetting that he was meant to have lost his voice, so Josie had to kick him lots of times to make him remember. And then, when the police had rung to tell Mrs. Sanders what had happened, she had come and taken them both out of class and made them tell her everything. Did Mrs. Sanders say anything about giving us detention? Asked Tom. Josie and Michael shook their heads. But Mrs. Khan seemed upset, said Josie, looking down. I feel bad for lying to her. Me too, said Michael. Maybe we should make her a card, said Josie. Yeah. And I've still got some of the Queen's biscuits left over. We can give her those for her tea, said Tom. But when we got to school, we forgot all about Mrs. Khan, because the school was surrounded by hundreds of vans with large round satellite dishes on the roofs, and lights and microphones and fluffy grey things on sticks.